Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Harris. With me are Kyle Yates and Mike Tagliere. You can find us on Twitter at DanHarris80, at KyleYNFL, and at Mike Tagliere NFL. Boys, imagine that you did a draft on Saturday. You felt pretty good about it. Wasn't perfect team, but Leonard Fournette just continued to fall like he always did in drafts, and you wound up getting him in the 4th, 5th round even, maybe something like that. Your boy, Jalen Reagor, excited. We've all been pumping him up. Really good to go. You're feeling really good about your team, and then Sunday and this morning happened. So let's dive right into it. No wasting time here. Let's talk about Fournette, okay? He's been cut as of this morning. Apparently, they could not give him away, and as we have all separately joked about, either privately or publicly, I don't know why I didn't call Adam Gase, who probably would have given up a 3rd rounder for him. First, let's start with the Jaguars backfield. What are you doing with this backfield? Are you targeting anybody? Does anybody actually going to have fantasy value? Let's start with you, Tags.
Yeah, I mean, Raekwon Armstead appears to be the clear-cut favorite here for the starting job. I don't know if the Jags are done, but it really makes no sense for them to go out and sign someone like Devonta Freeman when they just cut money. They said in training camp that Fournette just didn't look. It had nothing to do with his off-the-field stuff. It was all had to do with his performance on the field, and they felt like the other running backs were playing better. I think it gives them a better chance of winning 0 games, basically. This team, everything they've done this offseason has suggested they want to tank this season, tank for Trevor, whatever you want to call it. So Raekwon Armstead appears to be locked into that role. However, Chris Thompson is clearly going to mix in on passing downs. That's one of the reasons we were fading Fournette a little bit. This team is going to be in negative game scripts continually. I mean, this defense is shredded to bits. They're going to be starting quite a few rookies in that secondary that have 0 NFL game action, not even preseason. Divine Ozigbo, he's someone that's actually on the depth chart that people are expecting to get some carries. But in the end, I don't even really know if it's going to matter. This is a team that's probably going to average about 25 running back touches per game, maybe 24. Chris Thompson's going to see probably 8 to 12 of those. We're probably going to see Armstead locked into, I'm going to guess right now, 12 to 15 touches per game, which is not terrible, but it's also not great when you're talking about a low-scoring offense and one that's going to be in negative game scripts, especially when he's not a great receiver. So I've put him in at RB33 right now. I don't feel great about it. I'm not going to prioritize him in drafts. And to be honest with you, I wasn't drafting very many running backs in that territory to begin with, so I don't think I'm going to be starting now.
Yates, agree?
Yeah, completely. The negative game scripts is the thing that's worth highlighting here, because you're looking at Raekwon Armstead and you're saying, okay, well, he's going to inherit a lot of the touches, right, in 1st and 2nd down work, but yet how many games are the Jaguars actually going to be competitive in this year, where they're going to be competing throughout all 4 quarters? It could be where we see Armstead get the majority of the work on 1st and 2nd down throughout the 1st quarter, 2nd quarter, and then come the 3rd quarter, they're losing so much that you see Chris Thompson the rest of the way. So if there's any back that I want to own, it's Chris Thompson in this backfield, especially in full PPR leagues, half PPR even, and in standard especially. He gets pushed down a little bit. He's going to have value in full PPR leagues. However, with Raekwon Armstead, that's a guy that I'm fine rostering and having like as a bench stash that I can roll in on bye weeks, especially if I get decimated with injuries early on, but to the running back position, but otherwise he's just not someone that I'm like overly excited about.
All right, let's give just a number on it in half PPR rankings. We have all updated our rankings. Raekwon Armstead 37th in mine. Tags, you said what, 33?
33, yeah.
Yates?
I'm down at 48, and that's because I'm not finding, again, low scoring offense, right, as far as them, like I'm not projecting a high rushing touchdown total for him. So that's why he's down.
Very quickly, Fournette, are you still drafting him late, assuming that he's going to be picked up at some point by a team that's needy for running backs?
I'm not.
Bears?
I'm not.
Okay.
Because I think there are going to be people in your league that are going to still be looking at him. Like, they're still going to take the shot on him, like maybe 11th round in half PPR drafts where, that they'll be taking the shot on him. And at that point, if he's still there in like the 15th round, in my final pick, whatever, yeah, I might take him just because he has a potential to land somewhere, but he's not going to land anywhere that's going to give him the type of workload that he would have had in Jacksonville, and he wasn't even efficient with that. So it's like, what's the upside here with drafting Leonard Fournette?
I think the Go ahead,
does any part of us wonder if Leonard Fournette's inefficiency in Jacksonville has to do with the offensive system? I mean, we talk all the time about running backs don't matter and this and that and this and that. If Leonard Fournette had wound up with the Saints rather than the Jaguars, would he have been a different running back in his career? I think so. He's a guy that had breakaway potential at LSU, and he just hasn't looked like that running back in the NFL. Part of it probably comes down to the offensive line. So, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Fournette is as good as a running back as I thought he was going to be coming out of LSU, but I don't think he's as bad as people are making him out to be. I think the Bears are a team that would make a ton of sense to go after them. They don't have very much depth on their depth chart. He would accentuate someone like Tariq Cohen, where, Yates, you brought up Le'Veon Bell potentially to the Bears, and I said that never made so much sense just because Le'Veon Bell's a great receiver and you're going to negate that entire part of his game. So Fournette makes a whole lot of sense for the Bears, especially knowing that David Montgomery's dealing with this injury. I put Fournette at RB 41 right now. I do think that he gets picked up, and I would rather own him than someone like Adrian Peterson or Tevin Coleman, where I know what the ceiling is with these guys. I might as well take my chances on Fournette. I think the Bears and the Eagles are the two teams that I would watch the closest to signing him.
Yeah, I never thought he deserved quite as much hate as he got. 792 yards after contact last year, third in the NFL among running backs. So I think in the end, the best case scenario for him is if he doesn't get claimed and then he just sits back and waits for an injury. And sure. When a starting running back gets injured, and then he's just like, great, I could sign with them. That's really the way you get value. I have him lower than that. I have him in the 50s, 51st, I think. I'm willing to draft him with one of my last picks, maybe. But in the end, he's just not a guy who obviously I am going to expect to have any fantasy value this year. But hopefully he does if he lands in the right situation. Let's very quickly go to Jalen Reagor, who I believe it's been diagnosed now as a separated shoulder. I don't know whether or not that's been official. It was just a shoulder injury. The word is expect him to miss about 4 weeks. That would put him, if that's true. Again, I don't want to do too much on that timeline. Right. It was less than certain, but let's assume 4 weeks. That would put him maybe at week 3 if he can't get ready for that. Week 4. Are you still drafting Jalen Reagor, Yates?
It all depends on his price tag and how far he falls. I was in a draft yesterday with, some buddies from my church, and we were doing a draft, and he fell to like the 14th round in a 14-team league. And at that point, it was draft him, and this was like literally as the news came out about Jalen Reagor. So I was like, draft him, because at that point you're still getting like a potential boom player later on in your draft. At the 14th round in a 14-team league, you're looking at other guys that are just like, I don't even know who any of these players are, right? So I think that is worth the shot there. But if I still have to draft him in like the 10th round, 11th round, that's where I'm going to be like, no, I will let someone else take him. Because again, we're still talking about a rookie coming in an offseason that they haven't had any time to get onto the field yet in game experience, right? So I wasn't expecting like a huge just jump right off and, take off kind of situation for Jalen Reagor. I was expecting him to take a while to acclimate to this offense anyway. So now you delay that because he's not getting practice time either during this entire while he's sidelined. So I'm just not targeting Jalen Reagor anywhere.
What's his number on your half PPR rankings for receivers?
I have him at wide receiver 70 because I am projecting him to miss the first 3 weeks of the season.
Tags?
It hurts to see this happen. Obviously, the way it happened was in practice. Carson Wentz was sitting this practice out. He's been dealing with some sort of soft tissue injury of his own. Jalen Hurts threw an interception, and Reagor got hurt making the tackle, the play should have been blown dead anyways, so it's frustrating to see for someone like Reagor. I have moved him down to wide receiver 51 because, I'm not saying I need to draft him there, but it's more about where I expect him to finish at year's end. And I think I had him up around wide receiver 40, so I did drop him, for the multiple weeks that he's going to miss, because again, these timelines, they're usually a best case scenario. So if they're saying 4 weeks, returning week 3, that's like best case scenario. So I think Yates is right in terms of saying week 4, but I don't want to regret missing out on him. So I have like literally mixed emotions on this, because part of me feels like it's going to be an Odell Beckham situation where Beckham, a lot of people liked him going into fantasy drafts that year, and then he suffered the hamstring injury, missed, I think it was the first 4 weeks, and then once he came out, he exploded like right away. Right. I think Reagor can be that player, but the issue is that early in the fantasy season, you need to have players on your bench that you can cut, and it's the reason that I've moved Deebo Samuel down so far, is that I don't want to have someone there handcuffing my roster, right. Where you're basically sitting there like looking at Reagor every week, and you're like, oh, he's going to come back and I don't want to drop him, but I really want to pick up this guy off waivers. So it really puts you in an awkward situation. So I think Yates is correct in saying that it depends on the league you're in, how many bench spots you have, because most leagues are adding more bench spots. And if you have, let's say, 8 bench spots, I am absolutely cool with drafting Jalen Reagor as a top 55 wide receiver still, because, again, you're going to keep him on your bench. But if you move into those 5 bench spots, it's almost difficult. It's really difficult to roster someone like that.
Yeah, I've got him at 56, and I had him about where you were, Tags. He was pushing to get into my top 40. He was just outside of that. But I'm at 56 for basically the reasons that you say. I will still draft him. I have no problem keeping him on my roster. And when you get to 56, they're basically few guys that I'm expecting to contribute right away anyway. So if you're taking that shot, you might as well say, well, here's a guy with upside. I'm willing to roll with him for a couple of weeks because, again, the upside is there. The big problem is, of course, that we don't even know if Alshon Jeffrey is going on the PUP list.
Right.
Not necessarily. He might be, but there's these rumors, right, that he's going to miss the first few weeks, but not necessarily go on the PUP list, which means by the time Reagor gets back, Alshon Jeffrey may be back, and that does put a little bit of a damper on his value. But all right. Enough news. We've got a mock draft to do, okay? This is literally like, okay, great, we'll go right into it, and then be like, oh, wait, the entire NFL blew up. So let's get into it. We're going to do a half PPR mock draft today, Tags. Is that right, just to be clear?
Yes,
half PPR?
Half PPR, 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 2 flex spots, and 6 bench. We're not doing any defense or kickers, boys.
Fantastic. Now, obviously, because it's the 3 of us doing one mock draft, we are going to be using our multi-user draft, which is in our mock draft lobby. You know the draft simulator by now. You can mock draft in 5 minutes against smart artificial drafters using rankings from experts across the industry. The multi-user drafts, basically the same exact thing as our draft simulator, except like us, you can do it with other real people. Today, Tags, Yates, and I will draft against each other. But again, the gaps are going to be filled in by realistic artificial bots that are going to draft from the remaining spots. Again, same interface as our draft simulator. So just go to fantasypros.com/draftwizard to check it out. Also, before we get into it, let me remind you about another podcast that we have that I host called Game Changers. We interview some of the biggest names in the fantasy sports industry. Take a look at their journeys to the top. Mike Wright, Michael Fabiano, Jake Seeley, just to name a couple who have been on it. Our most recent episode was a really, really good one. Leslie Eccles, the co-founder of FanDuel. It's a great listen. Check it out. If you are interested in, either DFS or just building a business, she's got a great information and advice to lend you. Find it anywhere you listen to your podcast or go over to fantasypros.com/podcast. All right, Tags, let's get started. Tags is recording this on his desktop, by the way, so you're going to see what he does. If you get mad at it on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/fantasypros, you can go ahead and yell at him. All right. You ready to go, Tags?
Yeah, so we have it on randomized for the start of the draft, so we have no idea where our draft positions will be. Maybe Yates lucks out again, he gets the second pick, still loses the draft, whatever it is.
Hey, I got 3.
You got 3, Dan got 2, and I got 6. What the hell's happening? I always end up in the second half of the draft for whatever reason.
I love it. All right, so the mock draft starts. So I'm really excited because I'm thinking Christian McCaffrey might follow me here too. I'm really excited. And my team name, by the way, is Woody's Revenge. Now, this one is something where, frankly, my guess is that you two probably would take Saquon Barkley here. I actually have Ezekiel Elliott on my board as number 2. You're very happy about this because you want Saquon.
Happy.
That's fine.
Saquon,
Do you have a big difference between Elliott, by the way, and Saquon? Because to me, it's basically the same thing. I feel just Zeke is a tiny bit safer.
No, there's a pretty big gap between Saquon and Zeke.
Really, for you? Tags, is there a big gap?
There's not a big gap. I had a draft a couple weeks ago where I had the number 2 pick, and in a real draft, like it was taking place, and I actually let my followers decide who I was going to draft because it was so close between them two. And I've actually, to be fair, like there's people actually debating Saquon number 1 over Christian McCaffrey.
I'm not there.
I think it's a bad argument.
I'm not
there. But I mean Barkley. I mean, he is a freak, and I get that, and the offensive line has been upgraded. The receivers are all healthy and this and that. But the receivers being healthy, could that be a detriment to Saquon Barkley? And no Eli Manning, obviously, the check-down machine.
That's actually also part of what it is. I do think that it's a downgrade for him to not have Eli Manning there and instead of Daniel Jones. Again, please do not come at me with hate. I love him. It is a clear top 3, but for me, there's a tiebreaker with Zeke. All right, after I took Elliott, Yates took Barkley, then it went Thomas, Alvin Kamara. Tags, you're on the clock at number 6. What do you got?
Yeah, I've had a lot of people asking me about this pick and who they would take, whether it be Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Edwards-Helaire is the fun pick, right? Like, we all want to get excited about it, but if there's still some unknown there, and I'm willing to draft him at, 7 overall, 8 overall if those other running backs are gone. It's just really difficult for me to do it. If I'm, let's say that you're playing for a ton of money and not just a fun team, I'm probably going to take Dalvin Cook or Derrick Henry. In this case, I'm going to pretend that Dalvin Cook, he isn't the team. The weird part is, guys, we haven't talked about Yannick Ngakoue was traded to the Vikings, and they reworked his contract, ate up all the cap space the Vikings had. So I think it's very possible that Dalvin Cook, this is his final year with the Vikings,
right.
And that he becomes a free agent next year. I don't know how that's going to work out, in terms of his are you guys assuming he's playing, or would you guys rather take Derrick Henry with that pick, knowing that there's some uncomfortable tension between him and the Vikings?
Personally, I am still willing to take Cook. He can't hold out, man. You just can't. It doesn't make any sense under the new CBA. I just imagine that he's going to play, and I think he's going to play angry, and then I think he's going to get paid after it. So for me, I'm still willing to take him. I realize that you can't win your draft in the first round, but you can lose it. The risk there for me is not enough for me to worry about losing it. So I'm still taking him there, which is the pick that you made, which I think is the correct pick. I don't know about you, Yates.
Yeah, I'm there. Dalvin Cook, obviously, it's one thing for a running back who has played all 16 games, every year of his career. It's one thing for Christian McCaffrey to have this impending holdout, right? But then it's another for Dalvin Cook, who has yet to play a full 16-game season. So I think he is the focal point of this offense. You do have a 1-2 punch with Alexander Mattison there in that backfield, but Dalvin Cook doesn't have the type of leverage that he needs to be able to hold out. So I expect to see him on the field week 1. Again, it's kind of just hanging over. So it's really close. If you want to take Derrick Henry, I'm not going to fault you, but I do understand taking Dalvin Cook here at the 106.
All right, Tags, you're about to go.
Yep.
Let's see.
Yeah, there's a lot of players that came off the board that are typically available there at 207. Aaron Jones came off the board already. The wide receivers I was looking at was DeAndre Hopkins, Chris Godwin, and hearing all the reports about Scotty Miller, playing extremely well, Tom Brady liking him a lot, we might not see Chris Godwin play the slot as much as he did in 2019, and that's a little bit worrisome because he was a guy that did a lot better with his slot targets than he did in the perimeter. And actually, there have been some beat reporters saying that Chris Godwin looks good, but he doesn't look quite like the same player he was last year, and they're wondering if there's some sort of injury that he's been hiding.
He's missed a little time, hasn't he during camp? Right, so you wonder about that.
Yeah, it's forced me to move him back a little bit in terms of overall. So I chose to go with Austin Eckler, someone who actually has been quite the opposite. I've actually been moving Eckler up my board because we're starting to get less and less question marks because if you guys watch Hard Knocks, you can clearly see how much this team loves Austin Eckler. They don't really even mention Josh Kelly or Justin Jackson. Those guys are kind of in the background, and I understand that those guys are going to get some carries as well in a run-first offense, but Austin Eckler clearly has a role. He was highly efficient last year, and even though there is some regression, getting him as my high-end RB2, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I love it. So we can just talk about the picks that went after Tags first. It's a lot of running backs, as you might expect. Patrick Mahomes does go at the turn, which is something obviously that we wouldn't do, but you are probably going to see at some point.
Everywhere. You're going to see it everywhere.
You're going to see
home leagues for sure.
Other than that, it's a lot of running backs. Nick Chubb, Miles Sanders, Kenyon Drake, Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, Josh Jacobs, just name a few, went before Tags got there. Tags takes Eckler, then DeAndre Hopkins, Chris Godwin. Yates, you go here with Allen Robinson. You're a favorite of him. Are you worried, by the way, at all? Because he's a little nicked up, and there have even been some kind of slow rumors that he might even miss week 1 unless he improves. But you're not worried about it. You're just going.
Not at this time. Not if there's anything concrete. I mean, we're hearing this with a ton of guys, right? We're hearing it with Kenny Drake in a walking boot, and then we're hearing it with Chris Godwin potentially banged up. We're hearing it with Allen Robinson. So it's not enough at this point to drastically alter my rankings, if that makes sense. So I'm going to stick true to my board right now. And again, this is why we say push your draft back as far as you can, right? And so at this point, though, I still am going to lean into my rankings. I'm still going to lean into the fact that Allen Robinson is a top 7 receiver for me this year. I love his target volume in this offense. I love his opportunity. I'm going to take Allen Robinson here to be my wide receiver 1.
Yeah, so for me, that left the guy that I really wanted. Yates, you and I have talked about this quite a bit, which is the tight ends.
Yeah.
When you are getting here at close to the turn, I have Kelsey higher than this on my board even. I think I have Kelsey at 15 or 16, maybe 17. Either way, getting this at the 23rd pick overall for me is a steal. I love it. I would have probably taken Kittle too at the turn right here because I think it's fine. And again, the running backs that were here, which again are still here because the guy who has Christian McCaffrey, and I think you might see this with the guy at number 1, they don't necessarily feel the need to go running back at the turn because they're so locked in there. A lot of times they're willing to wait. And the guy with the first pick went with Kittle and Kenny Golladay, leaving me the running back that I really wanted, a guy who I was able to get much later earlier in the offseason, but now is the highest on my board and I have to take here, and that's James Conner. He's a guy who has slowly moved up, I believe RB 14, maybe 15, slightly ahead of Chris Carson for me. So I'm starting my draft right now with 2 running backs, Ezekiel Elliott and James Conner with Travis Kelce. Tags, are you with me, by the way, that you're going to take, if you're at the turn right there and Kelce falls to you, that's a must pick, don't you think?
Yes, Kelce is like an auto pick. Him or Kittle auto pick at the end of the second round. I'm not kidding. I would probably debate them in the middle of the second round. Had Eckler come off the board and instead of Patrick Mahomes, so therefore Eckler wouldn't have fallen to me. I probably would have gone tight end there. Just you're getting proven production. And again, if Yates, I think you did the same thing. I had this asked on me in a Reddit AMA the other day. It was someone basically said, if you're playing in a league that has just flex positions, it's no tight end required. Where do you rank Kelce and Kittle? Among wide receivers, they stat out as my wide receiver 7 and wide receiver 8. So it goes to show just how important, how valuable they are as basically a wide receiver 1. So getting him in that tight end spot, it's worth so much. So getting him there at the end of the second, I think Woody stole there at 211.
I did. You are absolutely correct. All right, go ahead, Yates. Make your next pick here.
Yeah, I'm going to try this, guys. This is the first time all year that I've drafted Lamar Jackson, but for him to be here at the beginning of the 3rd round, I feel like that's pretty good value, especially when we see Patrick Mahomes go at the 112, and then there's a full round in between Lamar Jackson. So I typically deploy a late round QB strategy, but Lamar Jackson and the positional advantage that he brings at the quarterback position, for him to be there, I want to see what my team looks like. And again, we're doing these mock drafts, right? That we're doing them for a reason. So I'm going to take Lamar here and see how my team looks at the end.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I mean, it's earlier than I have him, but I do have Lamar and Mahomes as 3rd round picks, late 3rd round. So when you're there close to the turn, if you want a guy, you've got to basically, take the leap. And it'll be interesting to see how your team turns out. Tags, before we go on to your next pick, you can obviously keep drafting. I do want to remind everybody about our monster giveaway. You do not have a lot of time left to enter this. Just a reminder of what it is: a signed Devontae Adams helmet, a $200 gift card from Pristine Auction, a $200 gift card from Porter Road Butcher, a package of fantasy football goods for your league's champion and your last place loser from Trophy Smack, and a 1-month subscription to Fubo TV. Now, the giveaway ends when we hit 7,000 reviews for the show on Apple Podcasts. I checked this morning. We are at 6,877. I will tell you that based on some advanced math that I just did, nearly 6,900 reviews is very close to 7,000 reviews. So if you've been on the fence about entering the contest, just do it and do it now. Also, if you want a Zoom call with us, that's great. If the winner is a subscriber to our YouTube channel, go to youtube.com/fantasypros. You also get that. So to enter, leave a review. Head over to fantasypros.com/contest to upload it, and you're good. That is all. In addition to entering the contest, leaving a review is something that just supports the show with you needing to do pretty much nothing whatsoever. Do you know why we started doing the Sunday night recap show a few years back? I can barely stand to talk to Tags on a regular basis, let alone have an actual standing invitation to do so. It's just because the reviews were coming in, and Tags was like, we have to give something back to everybody who is listening to our podcast. Do you know why we're going to 6 podcasts a week in season? It's because of your reviews and support. Do you know why I'm dressing up as Woody for our Halloween episode?
Spoiler.
It's because I lost a bet to Tags. But also reviews. They do mean something. They support our show legitimately every time we hit a review milestone. Tags that's out of woohoo. That's not even a joke. No. If you want an easy way to support us, just leave a review for the show on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher. Subscribe to our YouTube channel over at fantasypros.com/YouTube. If you have any interest in winning a ridiculous amount of stuff, leave a review and then enter the contest really, really soon because it is closing soon. Again, fantasypros.com/contest. Okay, sorry about that. Tags, catch us up on all the picks that I missed that you made for year 2.
Well, I made 2 picks. Obviously, I had Dalvin Cook, Austin Eckler in the first 2 rounds. So the reason I tend to do that RB strategy is because I like the wide receivers in the 3rd and 4th rounds. Sometimes the 5th rounds. I know Yates is probably swearing in his chair over there. Yep. Like he probably muted himself here because not only I took Odell Beckham in the 3rd, one of my favorite upside picks there. I understand he's a lower end wide receiver 1, but he's falling into the 3rd all the time. A guy that has 150 target upside all day long, getting him in the 3rd. I love it. But then I got Calvin Ridley in the 4th round, the middle of the 4th round, which is obviously fantastic as my wide receiver too. And it was funny because when I came up on the clock, it was between Calvin Ridley and Robert Woods, right? And Ridley is someone that I have like 2 spots higher than Robert Woods. I think they're both tremendous values. And I'm like, whichever one I don't take, Yates is going to take, right? And, well, Robert Woods went to Team 4, who, by the way, Team 4, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but Team 4 has drafted Michael Thomas, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and Robert Woods.
Team
4 I think he's going with the 0 running back approach.
Really? Team 4 crazy, by the way. Team 4 crazy. But you can do that, by the way. You can try out different strategies and actually say, this is what I want to employ for this draft on our draft simulator. And if you do, it'll basically make suggestions for you. I do not like that strategy. As I wrote in my running back primer sort of article, I get really nervous when people don't get running backs early, regardless of anything else. All right, so Yates, you sniped me at the 410. Why don't you talk about your pick?
Yeah, DJ Chark is someone who is moving up my board. I had him lower, and that was one of the things, like, and you guys know this, like, as we are talking about so many of these different players and just going through our projections, we hit on different players, and some of these guys just kind of fall in between the cracks. They just kind of fall there, and we don't talk about them, or I just don't even notice where they are in my rankings just because there's so much else going on. Well, I noticed the other day that DJ Chark was in my wide receiver 20s, and I was like, no, he's got to be way higher than that. I got to move him up. And then especially now with the news of Leonard Fournette today, where I had the Jags being a little bit more, I mean, not anywhere close to balanced, but I had them with a little bit more of a rushing attack. Well, now they're not going to be even as efficient as that. So they're going to be even more pass happy, which creates more opportunity for DJ Chark. So I moved DJ Chark all the way up to wide receiver 16 in half PPR format. So this is a guy that I absolutely love to be my wide receiver too.
Yeah, I love Chark. I was really annoyed at you, more so than usual, which is weird. So I'm sitting here left, and again, I've started with Ezekiel Elliott, James Conner, and Travis Kelce. So I'm obviously looking for at least one wide receiver here. I was hoping for Chark. I went for a guy who's a little lower on my board, not that much, and I went with Tyler Lockett. Again, I am totally fine with that. I think Lockett is a solid, to be my wide receiver 1. That's not ideally what you want, but Travis Kelce is really my wide receiver 1. For my wide receiver 2, I'm sort of caught in between, and I'm going to go with Keenan Allen, who I know Yates is not happy with. I passed over Cortland Sutton here, which might be Yates' pick. I've been debating it a lot more, and frankly, I do think a couple of things. Number one, I do think Allen is probably going to get a little more work than I kind of originally had anticipated. And also, again, the injury already to Derwin James, the defense is not going to be – defense is going to be good. But I do think that of the wide receivers, I still think, given that he plays the slot and everything, that he is going to get more of the work, and he's going to be fairly reliable in half PPR. So my team so far, Ezekiel Elliott, James Conner, Travis Kelce, Tyler Lockett, and Keenan Allen, and I am fine with that. And Yates, you're back up on the clock.
Guys, I need a running back, and I don't want any of these. David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, no thank you. Kareem Hunt, I would love to have as an RB3. I don't want him as an RB2 on my roster. Cam Akers, I don't want him as an RB2 on my roster. David Montgomery, I don't want him as an RB2 on my roster. DeAndre Swift, Raheem Mostert, no thank you. So I'm screwed.
So how do we feel right now about the let me go
Lamar
QB
Jackson.
round 3?
Lamar Jackson. Not feeling great about that. I'm gonna lean into some value here though, guys. I'm gonna take Devontae Parker here. I'm just gonna load up my roster with some wide receivers, and hopefully I can get some of these running backs later on. Again, I got quite a few picks in between my next one drafting.
I'm a little surprised you didn't go. I'm a little surprised you didn't go Cortland Sutton there, Yates, because I know you've talked about him, right? Sometimes I get both of you confused because we just talk all this stuff. But I think, Yates, you were the high guy on Sutton, or were you the low guy?
I did
on
move.
Sutton?
I had Sutton up, but then I moved him down recently. I have Devontae Parker at 17 and Cortland Sutton at 18, and they're separated by a point in my projections. So flip a coin. Okay. I don't care. But Devontae Parker was my pick here.
So tags after Parker goes Cam Akers, who is, moving up boards, of course, with Darrell Henderson, iffy for week 1. And then Bell goes. So tags, you are sitting there with Dalvin Cook, Austin Eckler, Odell Beckham, and Calvin Ridley. What are you thinking here?
No, I'm digging it. And the wide receivers that are on the board right now, I feel like it's a cluster where I don't feel like I'm missing out on a tier if I pass on wide receiver here. So I'm going to go back to the running back position. And I know it's not sexy to draft someone like Le'Veon Bell or David Johnson. I was narrowing it down to those two. And fortunately, Team 5 made it easier on me. They took me out of my misery and took Le'Veon Bell there at the 505 pick, which, by the way, I know that Le'Veon Bell's received a ton of hate, right? Like recently, and rightfully so in terms of like the offense that he plays in. But at the same time, guys, like he's a consistent running back 2, running back 3 option. Like he's not sexy. He's not going to win you your fantasy championship, but he also is not a guy that's going to lose it. If you draft someone like Cam Akers ahead of him, like Team 4 did, I think you could actually live to regret that pick more than you would someone like Le'Veon Bell, whose role it's solidified. It's not a great offense. But he's a guy that's going to get 15 touches per game. We can't say that about Cam Akers. So getting him as my RB, getting David Johnson as my RB3, I know there's some risk involved, but at the same time, who doesn't have risk at this point in the draft? And I'm not going to let him fall any further. The 5th round, I'm okay with David Johnson.
Well, first of all, I almost took David Johnson with my pick. I'm a little higher on him than you guys are, generally speaking. But going to Bell, I completely agree, man. The hate at this point has gone too far. And I get all the report. I mean, he's seeing a 60-40 split with Frank Gore in camp. But I don't really buy any. Frank Gore is, 37 years old? I don't care how much Adam Gase likes him. He's not going to be able to take enough. And again, Bell, for his own benefit, needs to have a good year if he wants to. He's going to be somewhere else next year. If he wants another contract, he's got to have a big year. He's going to be motivated. The Jets have a better offensive line, of course. I think he's fine as a low-end RB2. People are avoiding him like the plague, and I don't really agree with it. So, all right, tags. There was a little bit of a QB run here, oddly enough, before your next pick. In this round, Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, and Kyler Murray have all gone. You're not going QB here in round 6, are you?
No, absolutely not. And I feel like I'm drafting against myself. AJ Green just went at 5'12". Like I passed on him because I was like, oh, he's going to be there in the 6th. He's always there in the 6th, but I'm drafting against myself apparently. So I'm going to go ahead and take his teammate, another guy that I'm extremely high on, and Tyler Boyd. I have AJ Green at wide receiver 24 in my rankings. I have Boyd at 27. I think both of them are fantastic values based on where they're being drafted. So to get Tyler Boyd as my wide receiver 3 to pair with Odell Beckham and Calvin Ridley, I feel phenomenal about it.
Ooh, phenomenal. Okay. I would feel fine about it. How about that? That's how I go with it. I like it. I'm not as in on all the Bengals as you are, but I do like Boyd there as a wide receiver 3, especially when you filled your flex. All right, Yates, you are back on the clock. What do you got?
Guys, I need a running back. I'm taking...
Wait, what? Wait, you need running back?
Yeah, I need a running back. I'm taking DeAndre Swift. I actually was considering him with my previous pick, and I guess there are concerns that he might not be ready for week 1, so I will need to compensate, and I will need to protect myself with some guys that are going to be on the field week 1. But DeAndre Swift, who I project to be the lead guy in this backfield here at the 6'10", is phenomenal value in my opinion. I'm going to take advantage of that, and for DeAndre Swift to be my RB2, I'm fine with that.
Now, real quick, Yates, would you prioritize? Let's pretend that you take Swift in your real draft.
Yeah.
Would you prioritize getting someone like Kerryon Johnson, even if you had to reach around, just to make sure that you have the starting running back on that team?
So here's the thing with Detroit is that even if Swift misses, I don't think they're going to give the entire workload to Kerryon Johnson. I think they'll factor in Ty Johnson. I think they'll factor in Bo Scarborough. So I think Johnson is going to just remain in this satellite, back kind of change of pace role, 8 to 10 touches per week. And maybe that goes up maybe to 10 to 12 a week. But I don't think he's suddenly going to be this 15, 18 touch guy if Swift misses time.
Okay, so I'm on the clock right now, and I have 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, and a tight end. So I am looking here at what I want to do, and the next 2 guys on my board, I honestly would have taken a different running back, Yates, and it's the guy I'm going to take here. He might not be taken by Team 1, who, again, is the only team in between mine, and it's Raheem Mostert.
Yeah, Dan, I think we lost you there for a minute.
What's up? You don't like that pick? Is that what you were saying, Tags?
Dan.
Dan. Yeah.
Hey, Dan, if you want to go back and to talk about your pick, you froze there for a minute. I just want to make sure you're able to talk about what you were just saying.
Yeah, did I say anything, by the way, when you were?
I don't know.
That's a good question. You were frozen, so we don't know.
Okay, all right, here I come. Okay, so Yates, you took Swift. I'm thinking about what I want to do here, and I am going to take the running back that I would have taken instead of Swift. And for me, that's Raheem Mostert, who is higher on my board right now than Swift, who, again, had missed 7 or 8 straight practices. And again, it's a little dicey to take someone, in my opinion, who is looking maybe like you might miss week 1 at least as your RB2. But for me, I took Raheem Mostert. I do think in the end that he's going to get the lion's share of the work. I get Jerick McKinnon is there. I get Tevin Coleman is there. But I think you saw what Mostert did last year. They kind of, quote-unquote, committed to him. Not really, but they essentially wanted to keep him on the roster, made him happy. To be fair, I also thought that I would be able to get either Hollywood Brown or Michael Gallup. And the guy at 101 took both of those. So that's maybe a tiny bit of an error on my part, but I don't care. I'm totally fine with it. So I'm going to take some. I'm fine. This is fine. I just imagine that I am the dog drinking coffee in the meme with my house burning down around me. No, I'm fine because honestly, I will be honest. Raheem Mostert, it was one spot ahead of Hollywood Brown on my board. And again, I like having the running back depth. So right now, I am sitting here with Ezekiel Elliott, James Conner, Tyler Lockett, Keenan Allen, Travis Kelce, and Raheem Mostert. I am going to take a wide receiver here, my third guy. It's a guy who I kind of spoke negatively about because of all the injury risk, but in the end, I cannot deny the upside, and if he stays healthy, he's going to smash this draft position. Of course, staying healthy is the issue, and it's Will Fuller, who I'm going to take right now as I fill out my wide receiver spot. Is there a side there, or is that just a normal side?
Yeah, I had Fuller in my queue. I want to. While Yates thinks about his pick real quick, I want to ask you a question, Dan, because I have seen Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf continually. Like, I've done a lot of drafts at this point. Lockett and Metcalf are almost continually there going around that 4-5 turn, right where you were. And you took Lockett, DK Metcalf went at 5'11", or 5'01". Are you opposed, let's say that you're around that range and you took Lockett and you needed another wide receiver, are you opposed to having both Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf on your team this year?
No, I'm not necessarily. I think, we get asked this question a lot. Tagged, it usually comes up with Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, where the answer is always, no, of course, that's totally fine, do that. I'm not jonesing for it, Tags, because unless, Mr. Unlimited is really Mr. Unlimited, there's never that much of a passing volume. But you saw last year, both can be extremely valuable. Just because, again, even if he doesn't open up the offense, even if they do stick with the, let me just run it until, okay, it's 3rd and 7, now we have to let Russell Wilson cook. Given how Metcalf is such a threat in the red zone, given how hyper-efficient Lockett is, I think there is room. It wouldn't be my first choice to do, but I wouldn't avoid it if there was a clear, differentiation in wide receivers.
Yep.
All right, Yates, go ahead, talk about your pick at 703.
Yeah, I took Jordan Howard, and this is based off of taking DeAndre Swift. Howard, it has guaranteed volume. Right, he's this guy who I can plug into my RB2 spot if Swift does miss time, and I know that he's going to get his guaranteed touches. With having Saquon Barkley too, that's the thing. Like, Saquon Barkley is kind of in the same conversation as CMC, where he's like kind of like 2 running backs in one, right? So to be able to have, I don't need insane production for my running back 2 spot, because Saquon is going to be able to carry my team. So to get Jordan Howard here, I'm not crazy about it. Let me make that clear. I'm not super crazy about having Jordan Howard as my RB2. But at this spot of the draft and the way that my roster has been constructed, I needed safety.
Yeah, I don't love it. I'm just going to be honest. I get it, and I guess Jordan Howard is the definition of safety. And again, I think part of it when you look at your team is we just have to accept that we're not going to love the way it looks when you just kind of eyeball it when you have Lamar Jackson, right? Because we're all used to just waiting on quarterback necessarily. And so you look and you're like, okay, Saquon's great, then DeAndre Swift, then Jordan Howard. It's not something that you really want to be targeting. But I guess, if you're looking for sort of the floor, Howard is going to give you, but obviously there's a pretty low ceiling. Tags, you're up.
I took a receiver that I think has 120 target potential in the 7th round. I feel great about that. I don't even want to mention his name because people are going to give me crap for it.
Brandon Cooks.
Reality, it's Brandon Cooks. Probably in a position to get the most targets he's ever seen in his career with that Houston defense, the state that it's in. Obviously, Will Fuller has trouble staying on the field. We already know that. Randall Cobb's new to the offense. David Johnson's new to the offense. So Brandon Cooks, a guy that's gone team to team and continually produced. We talked to Jeff Fisher on the podcast the other day, and he was saying that basically if you have a player that's gone, he's moved from town to town and he continually produces, he's probably going to keep producing, obviously, when a team invested as much as they did in him. So I'm going to take him, and then I'm also going to get ahead of this because Yates is drafting after me, and I know Hayden Hurst is going to be on his team if I don't draft him here. So understand your competition, what's taking place around him. We already had Hunter Henry, Tyler Higbee, Evan Engram, and Jared Cook come off the board. Hurst, I would take Evan Ingram most likely before Hurst. They're in that same tier for me. But basically, I feel like I got good value with him in the 8th round here.
Yeah, I love him in the 8th round. I have him over Ingram, and this is a guy that I want shares of. Tagged. Your team, it's looking good. It's annoying me, but it's looking good. Running backs, Dalvin Cook, Austin Eckler. Wide receivers, Odell Beckham Jr., Calvin Ridley, and Tyler Boyd. Tight end, Hayden Hurst. Remember, this is a 2-flex league. He's got David Johnson and Brandon Cooks. That's a good team, Tags. I hate it, but it's a good team. It's a good team. Yates, were you going to take Hurst here, by the way, or were you just going to try to pound running back?
I wasn't, just because I took Lamar earlier. If I had waited on quarterback and I wasn't at the point where I'm like, I still need to load up on running back, I probably would have considered Hurst here because back into the 8th round, I feel like is great value for him. So I'm not faulting Tags for the pick at all, but I wouldn't have been selecting him here.
Okay, so who are you selecting?
I'm taking Tariq Cohen. We're looking at a guy that if I can get steady RB2 production out of him, which I think we can in PPR formats especially, and then you factor in the fact that David Montgomery isn't going to be there potentially the first 2 weeks of the season, Cohen's going to see a ton of work, not necessarily on the ground, but through the air. And so for Cohen at the back end of the 8th round, if he can bounce back to just like it's two different tales, right? Like as far as what he put on the field in 2018 versus 2019. 2018, 10-something yards per reception. 2019, 5-something yards per reception. Like, it's just ridiculous. If he can get to 7 yards per reception with the volume that he sees, he's going to drastically outperform where he's being drafted right now.
All right, so I'm up at the 11th pick of the 8th round, and I'm looking at it, and a guy, I think this is an okay place to take a quarterback if you absolutely have to. For me, this is the teardrop when you get to quarterbacks, and it's Matt Ryan, and I have him as the 8th quarterback. When you get past this, Carson Wentz, again, already battling a soft tissue injury. Tom Brady, fine, I get if you want to, assume that he's going to kind of air it out a little bit. Aaron Rodgers, we all love. We wouldn't mind waiting super long, but he's less certain. For Ryan here, the second year back in Cutter's system, I think this is going to be sort of a monstrous year for him. So I like locking that up because I think we all expect big things necessarily from the Falcons offense. And the guy who I assumed would be waiting also, you can look, this is part of what you need to do. I'm near the turn. The guy at 101 did not have a quarterback yet. I thought there was a chance that he would take one, and he did. He took Tom Brady, so this is why. But a guy who I thought I would be able to get here, who is the guy who, frankly, I just keep moving on my board. I don't know how you guys feel. I have moved him up slightly past the guy who should be drafted ahead of him in most leagues, and that's Zack Moss. I'm starting to get really excited about Zack Moss, putting aside the goal line work. It's one of the things with Josh Allen. We talk about all the touchdowns and all, when he got them from within the 5. Frank Gore got a ton of opportunities, however many it was within the 10, within the 5. He just wasn't able to convert. I think Moss will be able to do it. Singletary isn't having the greatest camp. I think Moss is going to really carve out a bigger role. So at this point, for my second flex position, gives me a lot of running back depth. How do you guys feel, out of curiosity, about Moss as we head into the biggest or the second biggest draft weekend of the season?
I mean, I loved Moss as a prospect, and I got a lot of crap for it. I had him as a top 5 running back in the class. I liked him a lot. I thought injuries were always the biggest concern with him, and unfortunately, we're hearing about a neck issue that he's dealing with right now that has him not practicing, and that is worrisome for me. Obviously, Devin Singletary was not running away with the job. They were extremely impressed with Moss. I want to see him back in practice, at least at some point this week, so that I can feel confident drafting him this weekend. But as of right now, I think we have to move him down just a little bit because health has always been a concern for him.
Yeah, my understanding of the neck injury was that it's not a huge deal. So, if there's been something more lately that I heard that it's not supposed to threaten his availability for in season. But if it were, obviously, then that's something that we need to think about. But again, we're in the 9th round at this point. It's something where I think in the end his upside is worth it. Yates, you took Latavius Murray.
Yep. I'm just going to continue to hammer running back at this point, and because I like the value at wide receiver later on. So I'm just going to grab these running backs who have, I think Latavius Murray is going to be a steady contributor for your roster, but then also has immense upside if Alvin Kamara deals with injuries again this year. So I'm going to just kind of balance up my roster with these guys as far as running back, the guys who are safe and steady, but then can also present some huge upside. So Latavius Murray here.
Okay, so then we're on the clock with you, Tags. In between, after Latavius Murray, went Darius Slayton and Phillip Lindsay. What are you looking to do here at the 6th pick of the 9th round?
Oh, I'm frustrated. I really did think that Latavius or Lindsay was going to be there, and they both went. So especially Yates. It's his 5th running back. What a piece of crap.
But he's doing, by the way, you're doing exactly what you need to do when you take the strategy, Yates, right?
For sure. No, yeah.
Pounding running back.
He did it right, and I'm just mad because I didn't get the player I wanted.
Right.
So now it's down to Matt Breida,
who
the reason this is so tough to do. I'm going to take Matt Breida here just because I think that there's a better chance that Anthony Miller falls back to me or Sterling Shepard. I like both those wide receivers in this range. But Matt Breida, I was looking at the week 1 matchup that they have against the Patriots, and I started thinking, okay, Jordan Howard is a guy that's ran behind great offensive lines. This Dolphins offensive line, by the way, I don't think many people realize they have 5 brand new starters, including 3 rookies on the offensive line. That is going to take a lot of time. And Jordan Howard's a guy that he's not elusive. He's a guy that's going to follow his blocks. He's going to hit the hole when he's supposed to. If they're not making those holes, that's a problem. Whereas Matt Breida is a little bit more elusive. He's obviously one of the fastest guys in the NFL. According to Next Gen Stats, he is the fastest man in the NFL with pads on. So him as the primary pass catching down back option, I think that he's someone that's useful as like a spot starter. So that's where he is. He's on my bench right now. So I'm good with that.
You gambled that Anthony Miller would make it back to you, and he did.
He did, and he absolutely did. So getting Anthony Miller as my wide receiver 5, I am dude. I mean, it worked out the best way I thought it could because I wanted Shepard or Anthony Miller to fall to me. So having Matt Breida and Anthony Miller on my bench feels pretty good.
Yeah, no, I like that pick. I would have picked 1 or 2 other running backs ahead of Breida, but I don't have a huge issue with it at that spot. All right, Yates, 10th pick of the 10th round. How many running backs are left for you to fill your roster with?
I'm taking another one here because I can also, if I'm looking at the draft board, I see that Dan's got his tight end, and I see that Team 1 has his tight end, so I can wait on grabbing my guy. I'm going to draft Antonio Gibson here.
Yep.
And again, at this point now, I have, how many running backs do I have? I have 6. But again, I've got 4 bench spots left and my tight end, so I can take advantage of the wide receiver depth later on, and I can just now finish up my draft with wide receivers, unless, a star running back falls to me. So again, with not taking that running back early on and taking Lamar Jackson, I want to load up on these running backs later on, and I feel pretty good about my roster now with guys like Saquon, DeAndre Swift, Jordan Howard, Tariq Cohen, Latavius Murray, and Antonio Gibson as my running backs.
Yeah, I like that pick. That's who I would have taken. I think Tags over Breida. Actually, we haven't talked about him that much lately. Tags, what's your thought here on Gibson? I mean, he's getting a lot of positive buzz right now in camp.
I know he is, but I mean, who's not in camp, really? Who's not getting...
Leonard Fournette. Very little soon. Positive buzz going on right now. No, too soon? You're right. Sorry, guys.
Oh, touche, guys. But seriously, I mean, I just want little to do with the Washington backfield. They still have a ton of running backs on there. J.D. McKissick is apparently someone they want to get the ball in his hands as well. They were saying if they only have 3 running backs active on game day, it would be J.D. McKissick over Bryce Love. So therefore, that worries me because they obviously have a role for him. Peyton Barber's still on the roster for whatever reason. That entire team, I just want no part of it. It just feels like a team that's going to. I don't think any week you're going to be able to project any of them for more than like 12 touches. And Adrian Peterson's obviously going. He's going to get his 8 to 12 carries per game or whatever it is. So I'm not excited about this team that has a horrible offensive line. I know Gibson's a weapon, and I think at this point in the draft it's probably worth taking the shot on him, but I just never find myself reaching on him as much as some people do.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I took Preston Williams here, again, a guy who generally has had favorable reports on his health. People, thought he might miss significant time coming in. I think when he's been on the field, he really makes a difference. It makes me a little worried about Parker too. Not crazy, but when you look at their splits, Parker splits when Williams wasn't on the field last year versus when he was. Now, the expert suggestion is Golden Tate, which would probably be a good pick for me right here. There's still a bunch of receivers that I like. I'm going to take a guy who I really like and I think is a really good pick this late when you need running back depth, which I don't necessarily do because I have 4, but it's Boston Scott. Yeah. We've talked about him a lot lately, Yates, you and I especially. He's a guy, again, especially Miles Sanders, forget about the injury, but if Miles Sanders, lower body vague injury is anything, he's, Scott is obviously going to factor in. Now, again, will they sign Leonard Fournette? Will they finally bring in somebody else? If so, maybe that puts a damper on it. But Scott's a guy who, averaged almost 88 yards from scrimmage in the 4 games at the end of last year. I think given the injury, especially now with Reagor, they're just, I think Scott's going to have an expanded role. So I like him, especially in half PPR or full PPR leagues, getting him this late. Okay, Yates.
Shocker.
This is a shocker. I don't understand. Who is this person? Who'd you take here?
It's this guy named Jonnu Smith. You heard of him?
Yeah. I'm surprised you dared wait this long. I could have just sniped him right before, even though I have a tight end. You can never have too many tight ends on your roster, as you know. So I could have done it. All right, Jonnu Smith. I don't think we need to talk about it. All right, then Golden Tate goes. Tags, who do you got here at the 6th pick of the 11th round?
There are 2 players in my queue right now, and I'm looking at the rest of the draft board because this is what you should be doing. If your league does not have a draft board, you should be creating your own, color-coded, so you can look at it and figure these things out, as Yates did with his tight end. I'm looking at it. Every team after me has a quarterback, so unless one of them grabs another quarterback, I'm going to be okay waiting for Carson Wentz as the quarterback that I want. And I know that sometimes, this happens in leagues, so you have to be prepared. And if Wentz goes, I can go with Matthew Stafford. I'm fine with that. But I also have Tony Pollard, and I'm guessing that Pollard would not be back there if I waited on him. So I'm going to take Tony Pollard here as one of the best bench stashes in fantasy football, and I'm going to take Carson Wentz if he falls back to me.
Yeah, this is the time to do it. This is the time where you want to take those guys who are going to be like, Scott for me is kind of the last guy of a guy who I'm like, he offers right now at least handcuff upside, but he independently, he also offers value. He's a guy you can get in there. Once you get past that guy, then this is where you start pounding those running backs. So Tags, did your gamble pay off?
Of course it did.
Of course it did.
Because, that's what I'm saying. That's why we look ahead, right? And getting Carson Wentz in the 12th round. Now, granted, I felt like Dan got a really good value with Matt Ryan at the end of the 8th round, but getting Wentz in the 12th makes me feel even better.
Yeah, Wentz in the 12th is good. Again, this is something where I find myself gravitating more and more towards Ryan. And originally, I think I had Ryan 8th. I may actually even still have, I should actually check that right now. I believe I have Wentz 10th. There's not a huge difference between them, but for me, that's the tier. I think Ryan offers that upside to be the top 5 QB. And again, Wentz already dealing with the soft tissue injury. And again, he's already got, maybe the Eagles are cursed, man, or the pass catchers are cursed or whatever it is, because he's already dealing with that. So it is a guy where I'm willing to take Ryan, even if it's 2 rounds earlier than Wentz personally. Okay, Yates, you are up. 10th pick of the 12th round.
I'm going to load up.
We only have 3 wide receivers. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm kind of ticked because Deshaun Jackson was the guy that I was like, he'll be there for me in the 12th round. And he went at the 11-11. I love Deshaun Jackson, especially now factoring in Jalen Reagor missing time. So for him to go there, I was kind of ticked and upset. I'm going to take Mike.
Are you on tilt?
Not necessarily.
It's the tilt portion.
Well, it was. I queued up 3 wide receivers, and it was Deshaun Jackson, Paris Campbell, and Michael Pittman Jr. Pittman Jr. is still here. I'm going to take him as my wide receiver 4 because you guys know, I love Michael Pittman Jr., and I think that he can make an immediate impact in the NFL. So I think to get him as my wide receiver 4, I don't need to rely on him right away. And so even if he does have an adjustment period, I think I'm still going to be able to afford that. Michael Pittman.
Yeah, no problem with it. I took a guy who, is very quickly becoming my guy.
It was the other guy,
and that's Allen Lazard. That's my guy this year. I'm drafting him late everywhere. I've explained the reasons several times already. He's a guy who, again, it's the second. If it is an Aaron Rodgers, I use the term metaphorical middle finger season, then I find it hard to see Lazard not having a big year. So that's the guy I'm going to take. Again, this is a time where, the backup running back, sort of where we are. I'm going to take a guy who I liked before sort of camp started. I like more now. I do think Austin Eckler is going to be the guy, but if there is another guy, I think it is going to be Joshua Kelly and not Justin Jackson. So there's laughing going on. I don't know if that's because we stole or
I don't know what.
No. I kid you not. If you guys are watching on YouTube, you can actually see my reactions as these things are happening. And so I'm putting players in my queue as I'm thinking about my picks, and literally they're just dropping off every pick Dan makes.
That's right. That's right. We ain't doing any crazy Dan's first mock draft. Let me try out a cool new strategy where I draft Michael Thomas and George Kittle early. This is my actual draft. This is how I actually draft. So now Tags has realized it'd be like, oh man, we like a lot of players. Of course, the 3 of us talk all day long about players, stuff like that. Not that surprising. All right. Anyway, Yates, 3rd pick of the 13th round. Go ahead.
Yeah, these wide receivers suck. I'm gonna take D.D. Westbrook, and looking at his opportunity in this offense. Again, we've talked about it. High passing volume offense. I need a wide receiver at this point who can just soak up targets. And D.D. Westbrook has the talent to turn it into something. We've kind of been waiting for it to happen. I think he was overdrafted last year. I was someone who was definitely excited with Nick Foles coming into town. But now that you have Gardner Minshew and an offense that is going to be throwing the ball a ton, I like D.D. Westbrook here.
By the way, something I do want to point out is that we have a cheat sheet creator where you can create rankings. You can do it based off of experts in the ECR. You can use your own. You can do whatever you want. And then take them into the draft room like this, which is what I have. So when I look, up top, you'll see there's a cheat sheet option. Those are my rankings that I'm looking at, which is great because I can look at them exactly where I have them, and it's very easy to follow. Sorry, just wanted to point that out. All right, Tags, go ahead. You've got, 2 picks left here? 3 picks left?
3 picks, yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, this is where, should I abuse the system? I feel like bad doing it. Raquel Armstead's available there. I mean, I'm not going to take him just because, I'll let the guy that took Patrick Mahomes in the first round take Leonard Fournette in the fourth.
Right.
Well, so
the news just broke, so we understand that maybe they're not really figuring it out.
No, realistically, we talked about it. I mean,
Okay.
he would be right around where I made the pick of Matt Breida. I'm not going to abuse the system. I'll let someone else. Someone took him right there at 13-11. So,
Okay.
I actually took. Sorry.
Get a hold of yourself, Tags.
I know.
So broken up about Raquel Armstead. Go ahead.
I took Darrington Evans as the clear-cut backup to Derrick Henry. It just feels like one of those handcuffs that you don't really have to wonder about because there's really nobody else on the roster. So that's why I went there.
You mean Jerry McNichols doesn't scare you away?
Jerry McNichols.
This is the one, Tags, where you chastise me because you've got the stat about how many yards before contact Tennessee running backs were able to see. But you're okay with Evans, right? Because I view him not in the Tony Pollard sort of category necessarily, but not that far behind it because I do think if something happens to Henry, he walks into a giant role.
Well, do you remember like last year when Derrick Henry had to miss that one game with the hamstring? It was like week 14 or something like that, and Deion Lewis was like considered a top 15 play because there was really nobody else in the roster to take those touches, and he did actually live up to that. So it's not sexy. I'm not saying it's going to be a league winner like Tony Pollard would be, but I think you'd have it every week running back 2 in that range.
All right.
And then on the 14th round, I'm going to take N'Keal Harry. When they signed Cam Newton there in New England, I felt like it was a big boost for him. I think Mohamed Sanu also benefits. I think the biggest loser in that was Julian Edelman because Cam Newton is not a guy who typically checked down over the middle of the field. Now, granted, he's never had Julian Edelman on his roster, but at the same time, N'Keal Harry is a guy that can win one-on-one situations. And, to find out what I have in week 1 against Miami, we'll see if he gets targeted. If he gets targeted 5-6 times in that game, I'll probably keep him on my roster. If he plays as the number 3 wide receiver and he plays 20 snaps, I'm cutting him week 1 for one of the best waiver wire acquisitions.
All right, Yates, what do you got here? Second to last pick.
I'll take John Ross.
Yeah, Tags loves it.
You're a piece of
That's too mean,
so mad.
Tags.
You guys are just too mean. You guys are taking all my guys. I'm supposed to be able to get John Ross in my last pick, by the way.
By the way, this is something I just want to point out while we're doing this. You look at the tight ends who are still available, even now, right? Dallas Goedert, Blake Jarwin, TJ Hawkinson, Noah Fant, Eric Ebron, Jack Doyle, Chris Herndon. In my opinion, if you're in a pinch, you can start any of those guys, even in like a normal 12-team league that you need to start. They are capable of being tight end ones pretty easily, and they all have upside. So it is something where I think, I'm not mad about taking Travis Kelce in the second or anything like that, but I do think that it is something where you can really wait, forever, not even draft a tight end, and probably be okay. I am going to now, again, I'm pretty loaded at this point at all the positions, so I don't need to focus on one or the other. I'm going to take James Washington. Again, I think if you can get a little piece of the Pittsburgh passing game at this point, you do it. They're not going to throw as much as they used to, and you assume, obviously, Juju Smith-Schuster. We are all excited about Deontay Johnson, but if you're able to get, James Washington, you never know. He could emerge, so it's worth the shot. For me, another guy who you guys know that I like drafting very late in my drafts is Steven Sims. Again, we don't love the Washington offense, but I do think that he's probably going to be playing out of the slot. He closed last year strong, so he's a guy who I'm trying to get with pretty much my last pick. So, Yates, who do you got here for your last pick?
I am going to actually take a second tight end here, guys. Looking at the opportunity and the guys that are still here on the board, Dan mentioned it. I'm going to take Blake Jarwin to kind of pair here with Jonnu Smith. Different bye weeks too, so that kind of lines up right. If you're going to take two tight ends, which we typically don't recommend doing, but if you are, make sure that they're different bye weeks. So with Blake Jarwin and Jonnu Smith having different bye weeks here, I think that one of those guys is going to break out, in my opinion. And so even if I am wrong on Jonnu Smith, then I have Blake Jarwin, who I think is going to be a fantasy relevant player this season.
That is the point, by the way, I think. I mean, as much as you love Jonnu Smith, he is far from a certain breakout candidate. Right. So when you are waiting, you're like, this is going to be my guy. There are a lot of these guys. So if you are going to take two tight ends, that's when you do it. When you have two of these guys, probably one of them is going to be serviceable each and every week. So I don't mind it there at all. Tags, last pick. Close us up.
Yeah, I'm going to take a second tight end as well because I'm just not a fan of the rest of the board. I was going to take Chris Thompson, but he wasn't there. So, yeah, that's where I'm going to go, TJ Hawkinson, because I mean, best case scenario, I can actually trade him away. You know, if you grab a backup tight end that like a Blake Jarwin, like a Chris Herndon, Hawkinson, those guys, if you grab one, like, people will overpay for a tight end that has a big week 1 performance, and it's definitely possible with all these guys.
All right, so time for draft grades. I will lead us off. I got an A-, 90 out of 100. How about you guys?
Yates?
I got an 85 out of 100.
I got a 94 out of 100.
God, this is always the worst. All right, Tags, why don't you read your league-winning roster?
My championship roster?
Yes.
All right. So a quarterback is Carson Wentz. Running backs, Dalvin Cook, Austin Eckler. Wide receiver, Odell Beckham, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd. Tight end, Hayden Hurst. My flex spots are David Johnson and Brandon Cooks. And then my bench is just littered with guys that I like, just potential upside. Matt Breida, Anthony Miller, Tony Pollard, N'Keal Harry, Darrington Evans, and TJ Hawkinson.
No, it's a good team. It's a deep team. I really have no problem, unfortunately, if I'm going to be honest with you winning the grade. It really is. It's a good team. It's a deep team. I think that's how you go about building your team. Yates, go ahead and read your team and then tell everyone how you feel about taking a quarterback in the 3rd round.
Yeah, so I took Lamar Jackson as my quarterback. I've got Saquon Barkley, DeAndre Swift, Allen Robinson, DJ Chark, Devontae Parker, and then Jonnu Smith, and Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen in my flex right now. Obviously, I would switch those around. Then my bench is Latavius Murray, Antonio Gibson, Blake Jarwin, Michael Pittman Jr., Dede Westbrook, and John Ross. The consensus grade obviously hurt me with not taking that second running back early, and of course having DeAndre Swift and Jordan Howard as my second guys, which I know the majority of experts are not high on. So, but I like my team, guys. I do. I think that with taking that quarterback early, I used the right approach to be able to just hammer running back in the mid rounds and take advantage of some really high upside guys with Latavius Murray, Antonio Gibson. I mean, even Tariq Cohen if things get back on track. So I'm a fan of this roster, even though the grade doesn't reflect it.
All right, so for me, I have quarterback Matt Ryan, running backs Ezekiel, Elliott, and James Conner, wide receivers Tyler Lockett, Keenan Allen, and Will Fuller, tight end Travis Kelce. My 2 flexes are Raheem Mostert and Zack Moss. My bench is Preston Williams, Boston Scott, Alan Lazard, James Washington, Joshua Kelly, Steven Sims. I'm not disappointed to roll into a season with that team whatsoever. And again, some of it is personal preference. I like Moss, and again, Tags mentioned the neck issues. I have not been overly concerned about it. I don't think it threatens his availability for the season as of now, so I'm willing to take him, and I am a little bit high on him. And Raheem Mostert, again, it's kind of my guy, a guy who I'm willing to necessarily go with. But in the end, that's really what separates it. That was a good draft. That was our last mock draft Monday of that season. I know. Can you guys believe it?
Crazy.
We're ready to go.
So close. And that's
here.
why I thought it was so weird that the Jags decided to cut Leonard Fournette like today of all days.
They were probably desperately trying to trade him, and Adam Gase got a new phone number or something, so they couldn't make it work. All right, guys.
New phone, who dis?
New phone, who dis? All right, that's going to do it for today's show. Remember, you can do these multi-user drafts. Go over to fantasypros.com/draftwizard. As you saw, they are quick. They're easy to use. It's basically the same interface as our draft simulator. Again, that's fantasypros.com/draftwizard. Thank you for listening, everyone. We are going to be back tomorrow with another episode.
Thanks for tuning into the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Make sure to check out our featured videos as well. Also, make sure to click that red subscribe button to get notified when we post videos in the future.